Hey y'all, it's Michael and this is part 1 of my wrap up for February. These are the audiobooks that I listened to during that month. First book that I listened to has several names called it. It's called something else on Goodreads, then my library called it something else, but it's called like Judgement Day. Also heard it called Rosewood like Judgment Day. There's a movie about it apparently that I've never seen. This is by Michael Dorso, narrated by Richard Davidson. But this is a non-fiction account about Rosewood, which was this town in Florida in the early 1920s, where a black man was accused of assaulting a white woman. And so there was this town called Rosewood where the population was mainly of African Americans, and because of this accusation all the white men were angry and basically burned down and raided the town of Rosewood. And so a lot of the population there escaped. A lot of them were unfortunately killed. They escaped to the swamps, and then they had to find a new home, find a new life essentially. And so they were basically run out of their town because of this accusation, and we all know that it wasn't true. And so we jump later in the 1980s. This is when it occurs, but 60 Minutes, which is still going on today, did a news report about it, and so the story picked up attraction. And essentially this is a non-fiction account of the trial procedure on how to get compensation back, I guess, essentially. This novel starts off as more of a narrative. We follow one particular person. We see how this town becomes what it is, and then how it ends, and then what happens to the family members essentially, and we get to see that. But then all of a sudden in this story, the novel takes this turn and it becomes this procedural court justice novel. It's more about what's going to happen with this hearing and about this case. And at first it took me off guard because I was like, where is the narrative going? But then I was like, oh my god, this is really good, because it reminded me a lot of a really fantastic episode of The Good Wife, which is one of my favorite shows ever. Me and my sister love that show, and I quite enjoyed this. This was fantastic. This was such a great nonfiction. I learned a lot, which is really important for nonfiction, obviously. Dorso does a really good job of leading the reader, because there's a lot of characters and there's a lot of people in this story and the overall, essentially what happened. And he does a really good job of keeping the reader, well for me anyways, on track. He knows where to lead them. He knows when to veer off and tell another story so that the previous story can, because he makes it really engaging. And so the whole time I was listening to this, it was so fascinating and so interesting that I was just so involved in it, and I really wanted to find out what happened. Brought up a lot of important topics that is, of course, obviously right now, still in the current media right now. What is our rights essentially? And even though this happened in the case happened in the 1980s, there's still a lot of discrimination, prejudice, racism, obviously. Really insightful, and I learned a lot. I would really recommend it, and the audiobook is fantastic. So yeah, I want to see the movie, but I don't know if I'll be able to find it. But I really enjoyed this nonfiction. I thought it was such a great first audiobook of the month, because I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic. I gave it 4.5 out of 5. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. The next book that I listened to was The Boy in the Black Suit by Jason Reynolds, narrated by Corey Allen. This is a YA contemporary-ish novel about Matt, who has a lot of stuff going on in his life. His mom passed away, his dad is having issues with alcohol, he feels really lonely, and so he needs money, so he basically gets a job at a funeral home. He's not he doesn't become a mortician, he's more of a helper, and so that's why he's in a black suit, because he is helping in the funeral home. We follow him and how he deals with all of this stuff going on around in his life, and how he's trying to deal with it. I thought this book overall, in the end, I was just like, oh, it wasn't that bad. What I really enjoyed about this book was how Reynolds was able to weave the story essentially, because he gives you these little pieces, and then the conclusion actually has this gravitas and this, I was like, oh, like it actually made sense, and I was really surprised how Reynolds was able to do that, because when you think back of what he was doing, you can see the things that he was plotting, and it's like really great once you piece it all together. You can really see how it's going to be together. Why I commend Reynolds doing that, I think for this book, for me anyways, was that I could see him plotting it. Like while I wasn't able to guess where the story was able to go, as the story progresses, I was like, oh, he's obviously gonna do something with this because he didn't tell us everything. Like I was like, oh, he's gonna do something with it. I just know it. It was like a double-edged sword, where it was great that like he was leading to a direction that it was like, oh, cool, but it was like, I can kind of see what you're doing here. But I did quite enjoy it, and I did like following the story. I liked it. I gave it 3 out of 5. The next book that I listened to is Milk in My Coffee by Eric Jerome Dickey, narrated by Ezra Knight and Robin Miles. Eric Jerome Dickey, I've actually never read or listened to anything by him. Like, I've never experienced a story by him. I was just really aware of his that book, his current book, because it had this beautiful cover of this woman, like within this black background with like colorful lips, eyes, and nails. It's a beautiful, beautiful cover, and so that's the only way I knew of him. But so I wanted to see, you know, what kind of story that he experienced, one of his stories. And I really enjoyed this one. This is about Jordan, who is black, and he moves to New York from the South, and he meets this woman after like a rainy, you know, in one of those things. It's a love story essentially, but he meets this white woman, Kimberly. This is basically about these two and how their relationships and how their race and how other people, like their circles, like their friends, their family members and whatnot, view someone dating out of their own race. And this is really funny because I just went to go see Get Out, so that was the only thing I kept thinking in my head as I was like about to do this review. I was like, oh my gosh, what if this turned out to be Get Out? But it didn't. This is a love romance. It does have erotica in it, and I'm not gonna lie, those parts where they were having fun sexy times, it made me laugh because, you know, I listened to a lot of these at work, and I just couldn't, like, I was like a little schoolboy at work just giggling because some of the phrases that he used to describe, this is why you could tell I just don't read a lot of like erotica in general, is because some of the words and phrases that he used like made me giggle and it made me laugh, and I don't know if that's just because it was like like, or however it was supposed to be, but I just thought it was really funny. But this, I was pleasantly surprised how Dickey was able to develop these characters, because when they ended up getting together, I was like, oh, it's just a one-night fling thing, like one-night stand sort of thing. But then as the story progresses, you get this really nice layer of like what it is to be in a relationship, and how, for me, as I was listening to the story, I saw it more of how people outside of these two relationships really judge, like how they really judge the significant others, and especially like a lot of this has to deal with race and class also, because there's a part where Jordan goes back to his hometown, and it's really insightful, and I thought that part, and then I was rooting for them, and I really enjoyed even like the side characters, how he writes the side characters. But I was like, oh, I found myself quite enjoying it. I was pleasantly surprised how much I really liked it. It was just like a really fun ride of a novel. Parts where it goes into a different direction, where like it kind of becomes this mystery and like this thriller-ish style of a novel. To like towards the end, they didn't have as much sexy time as like in the beginning, but I quite enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I kind of liked it, and I will read more or listen to more of his novels. I liked it. The next one that I listened to is, this title is really long, is Hidden Figures, The American Dream and the Untold Story of the Black Women Mathematicians Who Helped Win the Space Race. And that's exactly what this book is about. This is by Margaret Lee Shelterly, and it's narrated by Robin Miles. I have not seen the movie, just to let you guys know, and I have yet to see the movie at all. So the only time I've ever heard about this was when, about this book was when, you know, the movie trailer came out, and I was like, really? Like, I was so surprised that this is the first time hearing about this, and I was really interested, and so this is why I picked up the audiobook. So I kind of want to bring this up. I think I'm on a lower spectrum of how much people love this book. Like, I see a lot of people giving it 5 stars and 4 stars. I'm more on the lower spectrum, and I'm gonna tell you why. Hey, I'm doing a video. Let's just pull it. I loved learning about this. It was so insightful, and I liked how Dorothy Vaughan, we mainly follow her. I would say she's the main focus. There's more other female scientists that we also follow. Essentially, these women were really essential on helping win the space race, which, you know, against the Russians, that's a whole different thing, but you know, we were trying to get to space. We get to see her like with her family, and like her trying to overcome everything that, like, with school and like the segregation and like Jim Crow and things like that. I really enjoyed those parts. I really liked how how Shelterley is able to inject all the other history parts within the world, and how we're seeing these events really play out while they're trying to get equal rights within their workplace. I really like that. I think this is her debut nonfiction novel, I believe so. And for me, it didn't flow as smooth as some of the other nonfictions that I've listened to before. She would switch perspectives, and she would switch from one scientist to another, like things like that. I was on the flow of that, but then there were parts where, while I enjoyed, again, like I said, the parts where it was telling about the several history of like the world and stuff, felt really jarring. Like, for me, it really stumbled. But I think this is a novel that you should read or listen to. And, you know, I want to watch the movie. I'll probably get it whenever it's on Blu-ray. We should encourage other readers to seek out. I gave it 3 stars out of 5. The last novel that I listened to in February was American Street by Ibi Zoboi, narrated by, of course, Robin Miles. Before I get into this, before I get into American Street, I just want to say Robin Miles is an amazing narrator. She is one of my favorite narrators. I love her as a narrator because her voice just is so good. And all of the novels that I've ever listened to her narrate, it's just done so well. I would recommend it. And she's one of those narrators where, like, if I see her as a narrator, I don't even have to listen to the preview because I know it's just gonna be good. American Street is about this girl named Fabiola Toussaint, and she is Haitian. She's from Port-au-Prince, and she is flying to Detroit, but then her mom gets detained by immigration, so her mom gets left in immigration while I always want to say Fabulous because she was also called Fabulous, but Fabiola is left, ends up going to Detroit and is there with her cousins while she tries to sort out the hassle with immigration with her mom. So there's that. This book was surprisingly, it was in the middle for me. This book did a lot of things I did like, but it also, for some reason, there's this inkling in me that I was just like, I think it was more of the wantingness. Like, this book could have been longer. First off, this book does a really cool aspect of voodoo. I'm not that familiar with voodoo, and it was great seeing this magical realism-ish aspect almost. I don't know what to call it exactly, but that part of the novel, because she practiced voodoo, it's so cool, and it also debunks a lot of like what you think about voodoo. Like, she even talks about like, oh, getting a doll and like pointing pins on it and stuff. Like, they don't really do that type of thing. But it was more about like what she believed in with voodoo, and it was so fascinating. That part I really enjoyed because there were parts where it was like, it was just so mystical, magical. I really enjoyed those parts. I also really enjoyed the dialogue, and that's because since we follow Fabiola in high school, I really like how the people here talk, because for me, this is how teenagers talk. When I listen to some YA, sometimes I'm thinking like, this is not how teenagers talk, because trust me, I'm around a lot of teenagers with my family and their friends, and this is how they talk. And I really like how the boy's able to portray that because it adds this authenticity to it, even though there's these magical things happening. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. It needed some editing, and I say that because I think the book could have been longer. There were some parts where I don't want to give too much away because the blurb doesn't give a lot away. It leads to this aspect about this thing that the family does, which is a really cool part of the story. I mean, like, it's really cool. I was like, oh, that's cool. This book, I just felt like it needed more because I wasn't satisfied enough in the end because we get the conclusion and I kind of like where it ends up going, but I was like, it needed more. Like, there were some parts in the especially in the beginning where we're introduced to everyone. It felt just it just needed more expanding essentially. But I quite liked it. I gave it 3 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. So yeah, if you read any of those novels, let me know what you think about it. I would love to hear your thoughts. Until then, I'll see you guys till later. Bye. If you've been watching my channel, in case you're wondering why my hair is gray-ish, as you can tell, look, see my, it's like I have color everywhere on me. I went to like a Color Me Rad thing. It's on a vlog coming up, and that's what happened to this. So now I'm gonna go wash it out. I just thought it would be cool to do a video with this hairstyle because I've always wanted like gray hair because it's like a step further into my dreams of becoming a K-pop idol. So that's what I really wanted to do, but I thought it was really cool.
But who am I kidding, please now? I gotta realize that you